Hey everybody, it's Jim here, and today we're going to be checking out a guitar that many of you guys have requested that I take a look at, and that is this 2021 Fender Player Plus Stratocaster that now sells for $10.99 new. I bought it used, which is why you're seeing it on this channel to begin with locally. So I figured that since this is in damn good condition and really not used that much, this would be a good example of showing how far along they've come from the Mexican factory, talk about some of its strengths, talk about if this guitar is worth it in my honest opinion. So without further ado, let's put it on the bench and have a closer look. Alright, so checking out the body of this instrument, we have a really nice and underrated, in my opinion, tequila kind of sunrise finish. I didn't think I was going to like this much, but having it in person, I have to say, it's pretty cool. I enjoy the fact that they actually took a little bit of a chance with some of these finishes, including this one. It's not lost on me, so in that aspect, good job. Noiseless pickups that are staggered, modern saddles, 2-point tremolo system. We have a push-pull pot here on the bottom tone pot. If it ever wants to actually come up, there it goes. That initiates if you're in positions 1 or 2. That also will add the neck pickup into the mix. We'll see if we can get some tones when we're doing the sound demo to see what that sounds like. But other than that, pretty straightforward Stratocaster stuff right there. Alright, moving on to the neck here. We have the logo that used to show up on the American Deluxe series of Stratocasters. I recognize that. That's a pretty nice touch. The neck. It says that this is a modern C. I actually took the strings off for the main reason of measuring the neck thickness, and I did that. It's 0.89 at the 1st fret, 0.89 at the 12th fret, so it does not taper. It stays consistent throughout the neck as you go down it. Now, as far as the frets go, I'm going to zoom in a second, and you're going to see what I'm talking about as far as the film that's on these, which is natural and normal, I guess, for maple finished guitar necks. But for now, let's just check and see how level they are to begin with here. Now, I have to give credit where credit is due. The frets are pretty level, but that should be the case when a guitar costs over $1,000. The only thing is, when I was actually playing it, like I said, and like I showed you in the clip, I could feel the film. Now, is this a permanent problem? No, it is not a permanent problem. Eventually, this will wear itself off. I wish that when you were spending this kind of money, it was something that was done from the factory. There's no other way of saying it, because it's really noticeable on some of the frets, like this fret right here and this fret right here. It is extremely noticeable when you're actually playing. You can feel it where the fret stops being smooth and starts having the film back on it. But like I said, it's gonna wear off over time, or if you're somebody that knows how to or wants to dress and, kind of polish frets on your own, this is not the biggest deal. Alright, moving up to the back of the guitar, we start here with the Fender branded locking tuners. These will only fit on certain kind of models. I prefer to play more vintage style Fenders. These won't fit on those. You'll need to get some of those Goto locking ones, or the ones that come on the Made in Japan hybrid series, if you want a locking alternative for those kinds of guitars. But on this one, they fit just fine from the factory. We have a satin finish on the neck, and one last thing that I didn't mention about the neck is it's a pretty flat radius. It's the same as a Gibson. It is 12 inches as opposed to a typical 9.5 for a modern Stratocaster, or the vintage spec, which is 7.25. Alright, so after having a look at this guitar on the bench, my overall first impressions are, this is kind of heavy for a Stratocaster. 8 pounds 10 ounces, this weighs even more than my non-weight relieved Gibson Les Paul Standard, and most Strats that I play hover around 8 pounds or less, so this one feels a little bit noticeable in that department. But the good here is the quality control on this and the actual build quality seems really, really solid. So I'm excited to plug this thing in. We're going to be using the Mesa Boogie Rectiverb 25 on the clean channel, the vintage gain channel, and even a little bit on the modern gain, just to see how these noiseless pickups are going to handle kind of an overload of gain from the rectifier. So let's get started. Alright, now what I'm about to say is personal preference and personal opinion. So if you disagree with it or you like something else that I say I might not prefer, that's totally cool. Just take it with a grain of salt. The first thing that I notice whenever I pick up any guitar is how I connect and how I feel with the neck itself. Now, the good news about this neck, the shape of it is really comfortable. It's 0.89 at the first fret, like I said, but it doesn't taper. It's still 0.89 at the 12th fret. And I kind of noticed that. I play normally vintage style Fender guitars in the custom shops all taper off. So as you go down, you can feel it start to beef up. I don't really prefer ones that are straight through all the way like this one and consistent. The second thing I noticed about this neck was that it was pretty flat. And that's normal because a lot of the guitars I play are 7 1/4. This one is 12 inches. It's really nice for chording, honestly. A lot of people will say that they like chording on maybe a more vintage style radius neck. It might be a little bit easier for them, but for whatever reason, this guitar was very easy to play chords on, and I actually really appreciated that. The fret edges were rolled very nicely on this guitar, so I had no problems actually with the way it was built, with the way it was constructed, with the way it performed. Another thing this guitar has going for it is the tuning stability. It did a great job. Granted, I put the fresh new set of strings and set this guitar up myself, so I knew to break in the strings and really stretch them out properly. But that being said, once I took the 5 to 10 minutes to do that, I had little issues with this guitar playing straight away and having it be a reliable instrument in that aspect. And that's always a good thing, and unfortunately, that has to be kind of highlighted at this point because that's not always the case. Now, if anybody from Fender ever watches this video or ever cares what I think, there's one thing I think that this guitar could use that wouldn't be a big change, that would greatly enhance the feature that you added to it, and that is this push-pull switch on this bottom tone pot. You see me struggling with that? In the middle of actually playing all of those demonstrations with it, I started with it pulled out so I wouldn't have to struggle with actually pulling it out while switching to show the two different tonal examples. If they replace that with a push-push switch like the one that comes on the American Professional 2, that's not a big price difference in the part to be able to do that. It would make me a little bit more likely to want to try that a little bit more often because as it stands right now, you really have to get under it and you really have to pull up. It's not the end of the world, and I don't think the tones are, out of this world as far as the quality once you do lift it up, but if you wanted to have that be more accessible, a push-push pot instead of a push-pull, given the fact that these are the vintage style of knobs, I think it couldn't hurt. And while I have the guitar propped up like this, I have to address the finish on this guitar. When I first saw the leaked pictures, I didn't think it was going to be anything to write home about, but after having this guitar in person, it really did a great job, in my humble opinion, with this Tequila Sunrise. It is fantastic and just a real looker. Now, shifting our focus to the actual tones and the sounds of this guitar, I personally will always opt for traditional single coils over a noiseless variant, but in the midst of a mix, if you're sitting out and you're playing this guitar live, which I'm going to get to in a second, I think that I know the exact target market for this guitar, you're never going to notice that little bit of loss as far as the high-end fidelity of the tone and the clarity compared to the other traditional single coils, in my honest opinion. And that leads me to, I think that they named this guitar wrong. I don't think this should be the Player Plus. I think this should be the Performer. This guitar is set so modern and so kind of different than a lot of the Fenders that they offer right now. I know that they used to offer a very similar model to this that was the Deluxe that also had noiseless single coil pickups on it and a 12-inch radius. It used to be $650. Ooh, that's a steal if you think about it nowadays. But this is that kind of guitar. It doesn't really feel like my traditional Fenders because of the way the neck doesn't taper. You have a very, 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 very unique and modern finish on it. You have the noiseless pickups that, again, they're ideal if you're playing in a place that has less than the best kind of lighting or electrical routing to it. You find that stuff really handy, and this guitar just feels really solid in that aspect. The stability of it is great. This feels like a guitar that you would want to go out and play live with and just have to be a real reliable workhorse. So that leads us to the elephant in the room here, and that is, of course, the price. This guitar now costs $1,100 before tax. You get an okay gig bag along with it, and if you're going to be using it for the purposes that I said, which is going out and playing live with it, you're going to want a better case. Even if it's not a hard shell case, even one of the mono gig bags to really protect this guitar, you're going to factor in another $100, $150 on top for that. At that point, new, you're looking at Jeez. Under $1,300 or right around $1,300 for everything out the door. Would you need to upgrade anything else though? In my opinion, no. The guitar is put together really well. It's really reliable in that sense. If the kind of film on the frets really bother you, you can always, like I said earlier in the video, have that dressed and eventually it will wear off. But that's the only real complaint I have with this guitar outside of the weight and the price. But the real problem becomes right now when I'm filming this video, you can still easily get American standards that come with a really nice hard shell case that hold their value really well by comparison to the Mexican variants for the most part for $200 to $300 less than this all day if you just do a little bit of looking around in great condition. And at that point, if I had to pick between an American standard that's very easily accessible in this country, I'm not even going to touch the made in Japan stuff, I'd still opt for that option than one of these guys. But if you can do what I did and you can find one of these used for a reasonable price, then it's a good guitar and I absolutely would recommend it. I know it's going to surprise a lot of people that watch this channel. You're probably expecting me to slam this guitar, but I can't lie to you. I'm very impressed with it. It's not for me because of the reasons that I've stated. I'm not going to beat a dead horse to death here, but I can absolutely see who this would be for, and I think it does a great job at it. The build quality on the specific guitar that is in my hands is great. Not a whole lot to complain about. So, is it worth $1,100 brand new? To me, not really. Maybe it is to you, and with the way that prices keep going up and another price increase planned for later on this year from Fender, who knows where it's going to be priced at that point. However, if you made it this far into the video and you're interested in a Fender Player Plus, I'm selling this exact one. The link's going to be in the description. $875. That's going to be substantially cheaper than the next closest one on Reverb. And you got to hear and see exactly what you're getting. So that's all I have for you guys today. If you leave a like, I really would appreciate that. I work really hard on these videos. I have fun doing it, but it is work, believe it or not. Subscribe if you haven't already. Leave me a comment. Let me know if you think that these guitars are priced appropriately or if you're going to be waiting and kind of watching out how things go with the market. Look out for something used. I don't know. We're all different. Everybody has value in different areas, so to speak. That's all for today. I'll see you tomorrow. Take it easy, everybody.